Hi, Roz. How are you?
Hi, Stacey. I'm great, thank you.
Well, it's funny. You say you're doing great, but I'm sure it's a little bittersweet because you're sitting here talking to me on Skype. You're, of course, back in England. You should be on a rowboat right now, right?
This is not where I expected to be. Yes, by now I expected to be freezing my backside off somewhere on the North Atlantic. We were supposed to set out from St John's in Newfoundland by the 14th of May in order to try and get to London in time for the Olympics. But here we are now at the 2nd of June, and it's now been 2 weeks since we very reluctantly reached the conclusion that we were going to have to cancel this year's row because it was just too dangerous out there. Conditions are quite unusual this year. Some of your listeners might recall there was a huge chunk of ice that broke off from a glacier in Greenland a couple of years ago. Apparently it was 4 times the size of Manhattan. And that has gradually been breaking up and making its way south. And right now it was coming down level with St John's in Newfoundland, which is where we were supposed to be setting out from. And the North Atlantic is a pretty sketchy proposition at the best of
Of
times.
all,
It's
yeah,
always going to be
of all of the
rough and
oceans,
cold.
yeah. Of all the
Yes.
oceans that you've done, would this have been the hardest one?
That's what I was expecting.
Okay.
Yes, just in terms of the temperatures, the water is only just above freezing. We knew that there would be a certain amount of ice out there, not the quantity that there actually is this year, which has caught even the experts by surprise. Um, we knew that there could be very big waves on the Grand Banks, which is this shallow area off the Newfoundland coast. We were prepared for all of that, and we could have coped with that. We got really good kit on board. We even had a little heater in our
Oh,
cabin
really?
in case we got hypothermic. So we'd done everything that we could to be prepared for normal North Atlantic conditions. But then once we actually arrived in St John's and started talking with local fishermen and local weather experts, the people who monitor the ice because they have to make sure it's not going to bump into the oil rigs offshore there,
Sure.
we started getting this feedback that it was actually just a really unusual year. And in fact, those unusual conditions might actually prevail for another couple of years still.
Uh,
So it's kind of ironic that as an environmental campaigner myself, that my latest expedition has probably been kiboshed by side effects of climate change, which is causing this Greenland glacier and the ice sheets up there to disintegrate at a higher than usual rate.
Yeah, I mean and that's of course something that this row would have also been addressing environmental issues as well, especially when you were to arrive in England. I mean, this is something that's so near and dear to your heart. But yeah, it has to have been. But I got to say, I'd rather have you here than coming head to head with an iceberg. As brave as you are and as knowledgeable as you are, it would have made, I would have, if I had been your mother, I'm sure your mom's probably, is she pretty happy that you're not going, or?
I think she might be quietly relieved. I mean, Mum is great. She will always support me no matter what it is that I choose to do. But she's read books about people rowing across the North Atlantic and having a really, really challenging time out there.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm sure that quietly she is quite relieved. It was a really, really tough decision. You know, this time around I was going to be, for the first time ever, rowing with a crewmate.
Hmm.
And we had to be completely unanimous, but there was never really any question about that. You know, we've both got too much to live for this year, well, every year. As the saying goes, it's better to be in port wishing you were at sea than being at sea wishing you were in port. So it didn't make sense. It was just the odds were too stacked against us this year.
You know, you had plans that you had put off in order to do this row. Now, can you go back and revisit some of those environmental, adventures that you had planned? And I know you also are going to be going back to school, I believe,
I
later this
am,
year.
yes. Well, I will be picking up my Trash Mobs project again, but not until next year. It'll take until next year for me to be properly ready for that.
Gotcha.
But it's funny how my diary doesn't stay empty for very long. I just found out, actually, this is a bit of a sneak preview on this news because it's not officially announced yet, but I've got a book deal for my Pacific book.
Oh, fantastic! Round of applause. That's so great, Roz. Oh my gosh.
So now I'll be spending the next couple of months working on necessary revisions to the manuscript. It's basically written, but now that I know who the publisher is going to be, it just needs a little bit of tweaking. So I'm really looking forward to getting down to work on that. And then, as you say, yes, I am off back to school. I'm very honoured to have been chosen to participate in the Yale World Fellows Programme.
Wow. And so
they picked just...
Yeah, what will that be? What will that entail?
Well, they picked just 16 of us from 2,500 applicants. And we represent, I think, 14 different countries around the world.
Wow.
And it's just a one-semester programme for emerging leaders. So the core of the programme is a seminar in which I imagine that we sit around putting the world to rights, which is absolutely my favourite kind of conversation. So I think it's going to be a really formative experience for me. I think it's coming at precisely the right time in my career as I now finally managed to retire, hang up my oars and move into a more direct form of environmental campaigning. So I'm very open to new informative influences at this point in my life and open to all these experiences and opportunities and new friends that I'm going to have on the Yale course. Really excited about that.
Well, and you're going to be bringing so much to it, obviously, so much that other people, I mean, your experiences are so unique. So what you're going to bring to the table, I think, is going to be very, very special. But you mentioned something about putting up your oars or something. Do you think you'll ever row again, though? I can't imagine that. I mean, you've said before, never say never, but do you think that that you will live to row again?
Well, I hope to live for a good long time. I think that the rowing has served a very useful purpose over the last 7 years. It's been incredibly character building for me. It's given me a lot of insights, not into just my own nature, but I think into the human condition more generally, and into the way that we're treating the planet. And I think the time has come now for me to really take those experiences and that greater wisdom and knowledge and bring that to bear on these challenges that face us now. And even though the ocean rowing has been amazing, it does come with quite a high opportunity cost. It takes so much time to organise an expedition. And then, like last year, I was on the Indian Ocean for 5.5 months altogether. I mean, that puts a really big hole in your social diary when you can't be going to conferences, giving presentations, giving lectures, writing books. You're really limited what you can do to pretty much rowing and blogging. And so I think that going forwards, as these challenges we're facing, the situation is intensifying, and I think I need to just be full-time committed to that. So nice to say my diary for next year is already filling up with speaking opportunities and the book tour and a couple of little adventures in there as well. I mean, I do still love getting out and about and doing something energetic. Absolutely. So I certainly don't see my adventuring days as being over. But I think from now on, I would like to be spending more time on dry land.
I know. Well, adventure is your middle name, and you have to save me a book because your book on the Atlantic rows it was a wonderful read. So I just appreciate you taking the time to fill us in. And I know it was probably a little bit of a disappointment, but you know what? The universe spoke. And you're not supposed to do that right now. You've got other things to. You've got a very big plate filled, I think. So.
Yes, there's a lot to be excited about. So yeah, for a while I was really extremely disappointed, quite devastated by the decision. But life moves on, and I've got so much to be excited about now that I'm just really looking forwards and onwards and upwards.
Well, fantastic, and we will be there every step of the way, backing you and supporting you. So, Roz, thank you so much for doing this. You're wonderful.
You're very welcome. It's been a real pleasure to catch up with you, and I hope we speak again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Roz.